this microphone.
Break when it's cold. When it's cold, because like the army has, well, actually it's the military has.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh yeah.
Oh, where's?
I can stay there for 5
Hey
days
there.
for $500 something.
I wonder how come it's not showing me an option to.
Yeah. Yeah. All I have to do is pay for everything.
Where's the record button all of a sudden?
Restart.
Stop sharing. That's microphone. It's always up here. Screen, webcam. Let's do this and see if that works.
When in doubt, restart.
Yeah, that's weird. Just talk amongst yourselves. I'll figure this out. I feel like maybe it's something here.
What do you think about that health care bill?
It's going to be voted on this week.
Oh, man.
Oh, I joined it as a...
It's a mess.
It is a mess. It's not a very good bill.
Because he didn't change much.
There's a lot of things that, and I'm saying there's a lot that can be benefited in Obamacare. Like, they can really change a lot. I think they should focus more on fixing that than creating a whole new bill. Because there's, like, my family got screwed on Obamacare. You know, like, it's not great. But I think that they should say is, we got this bedrock now. Let's take the things out of it that aren't working. And then, but no one listens to me, so. Why is this not working? Hold on a second.
I think Trump just want to say that he did it. That's all he wants to do, is say that
he didn't do anything with it.
He fulfilled his.
Okay, let's try this. Oh, I forgot to enable recording. Ha!
But the thing about that is, it's a huge subsidize for the rich and the industry.
Okay, here we go.
It benefits them more than it benefits us.
Oh yeah. Oh, and there's big tax cuts in it.
Yes.
For the wealthy. That's really the issue. So give me a tax cut, right?
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Okay, so now I've got it.
$100 billion? What do I need a tax break for?
I'm just gonna not pay my taxes anymore. See how that works. They'll come after me, right? They give us our money.
Yeah, put you in prison for that.
And you'll have free healthcare.
Yeah. There you go. A silver lining.
But you share in the shower for the rest of your life.
That's true. I don't know if I like that. Okay, so now I'm just about ready.
Do 20 years in the military, you'll get free healthcare.
All right. And let me just upload my slides again. Hey there. All right.
If you're not patient with the military healthcare system, it's going to be a long road for you. When you go to the VA, just plan on being there all day long.
Yeah, is that what it's like?
Plan on being there all day long.
Just bring a book?
If you get upset, they still ain't going to work no faster.
Right. Oh, right, exactly.
As a matter of fact, they're going to move slower.
Yeah. Okay, so now I think we're ready. I figured out what my mistake was. Okay, so I'm going to start recording. And okay, so welcome to the last class lecture that we're doing today. Thank you. You made it. Good job. I know that the blended classes is a lot of work in 7.5 weeks, so congratulations on making it through. I am behind on my grading because of my vacation this weekend. So you see I haven't graded your week six quizzes yet. I'll get to those today and tomorrow, but just FYI, I will address that. You do not have a quiz this week at all. No readings, nothing. I want you to focus on the last few things that you guys have due. So let's go ahead and look at our last module here. Okay, so you've got your blended participation assignment. Those are the nuggets, so you need to be working on those. Final project and the reflection essay 2 as well is due. So those are all due by midnight or 11:59 on Wednesday night. If you were late in submitting your week 7 quiz, I'm open to waiving the late fee, the late penalty. As long as you get everything in by Wednesday, I'll accept it. So we'll probably actually get a little out a little early today as well. But on Wednesday, I will be in the library all day. I'll be logged on to Skype. I'll be logged into Canvas because there's a chat feature in Canvas as well. I think it's like Yeah, right there. So I'll be logged into everything. So if you're an online student and you have questions, or you're a ground student, you can come find me. I'm happy to review any of your final projects, or your essays, your reflection essay, or your nuggets if you need any help with any of that. Just come find me, let me know. But again, no class Wednesday, work on your final stuff. And take the course survey. It, at some point, is going to lock you out if you don't take it. So just go ahead and take that. Okay, so any questions about what you guys have coming up, where we stand in class? You guys doing okay? Everyone's good? No one's super stressed out right now? Or just, yeah, you are. Okay, well, that's all right. It's mid-semester, and everyone probably is stressed out right now. Okay, so like a week or two ago, I put an announcement up asking students if they had any suggestions for last topics. No one responded, so I'm doing what I want to do.
I sent you all kinds of stuff.
Well, no, I'm saying for like my lecture for today. So we're going to look at the evolution of political parties in American history today. And there's chat maybe about what we think about the current state of U.S. politics, which is always fun. And then we're going to go. So that's kind of where we stand today. Let's go ahead and do a poll. And actually, since there's only like 6 of us, we can do this kind of as a just a verbal too. It's up to you if you want to log in. But so do you feel after you've taken this class that you're taking away some new insights? Maybe your eyes have been open to new global issues. You maybe notice more things in the news. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, that's the whole point of the class, right? Not to make you an expert on any of these issues, but to give you kind of an awareness that these are issues in the world today. So that always makes me feel good. I like that. Because it is important in today's day and age that, I know, what are current events, right? It's important as global citizens in this globally connected world to at least have an idea of what's going on in the world. Obviously, you can't know every single thing that's going on. There's too much information out there. But hopefully you learn some methods to finding good media sources and good ways to figure out this information, okay? All right, now, so let's talk. There's some trending news that we want to discuss this morning. And the first is, did you guys notice the travel ban? Okay, there's actually a lot of Supreme Court stuff coming up, some big Supreme Court things. So they're going to, I think today's the last day of their session.
Yes. Yeah.
They're going to break, and then they'll announce what they're going to hear for the next session. But so this is actually a really big deal because they lifted some of the travel ban regulations or the restrictions. They didn't say everything, yes, but what they said is essentially in this lifting some part of this travel ban is they can still ban people from those 6 countries that don't have any connections to the U.S. So that was kind of the big...
And the countries they're coming from.
Right, and so that's what was always one of the sources of contention from a lot of people is that this is going to hurt people that are maybe here on green cards legally, or they leave the country to go on vacation. So now if you're one of those people, the travel ban still will not affect you.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of a happy medium until the Supreme Court looks at the entire case and they rule on whatever it is they're going to rule on. So that's something to really consider. It's been all over the news this morning. It just came out. I mean, did it come out last night or this morning?
This morning.
I noticed it this morning. Yeah, so that's something that we need. Oh, it'll be heard in October.
Right.
So, I mean, we got the summer to wait it out. But what I would like to see is if they are going to have a ban, it needs to be more than 6 countries. If it needs to be Saudi Arabia, we need to add these other countries to it as well.
I agree.
They're not going to for political reasons,
Right.
but the hypocrisy in this is very glaring. Because people that are committing terrorist acts are coming from other countries than just these 6 countries. So
they're just going to go to Saudi Arabia and fly from there.
No,
Well,
they can't.
it's your passport.
No, they can't because what's going to happen is if, for example, an Iranian tries to fly out of Saudi into the United States, it's not going to work because he has an Iranian passport. And not a Saudi passport.
Exactly. It'll go by
he's
your...
going to get flagged because he's Iranian, not because he's coming from
Right.
Saudi.
It'll go from your home country.
Right.
So we'll see how this this works because, you know, I don't really agree with this. I think it is unconstitutional because it is targeting Muslims, in my opinion. I'm not a Supreme Court justice, so we'll see what they have to say. However, we need something different, right? Like, you know, with the increase in terrorist attacks, especially in Europe, you know, I can see, like, we need a different strategy. See if this works, see if it doesn't work. So I can see, okay, I'll give you a little concession there, you know, see if it works, but we'll see what the Supreme Court ultimately has to say, because they're ultimately going to be the final word in this. They're the ones that understand the Constitution better than the rest of us, so we'll just kind of have to wait till October. But what else are they going to try, are they going to hear?
Well, hang on. They're not targeting Muslims.
Okay, Frank.
They're targeting terrorist Muslims.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes, the civilian Muslims are going to get caught up in
Yeah,
it.
well, okay, I don't believe that they're not targeting Muslims. I think that they're using safety and security as an umbrella for discrimination. That's how I interpret it. That's how I look at this. Look at all the rhetoric Trump has said on the campaign trail, what he said as president. He's just, I mean, it's just pretty clear to me.
Yeah, he can't get out of his own
I can only assess and analyze based off what he gives us information-wise, and it's very clear that, and he is, you know, you have to give him credit. This is what he campaigned on, right? He's trying to keep his base, and a lot of his base, and not all of his base, don't give me this, I'm not giving a blanket statement, but a lot of them don't want Muslims in this country. And so he's pandering to that small percentage of his base that is loud and is vocal and don't want Muslims here. So to say it's not a Muslim ban, I don't necessarily agree with that.
I mean, for example, I don't have a problem with Muslims. I've met many of them while I was out there. They're decent people.
Okay, but here's the thing.
It's the fanatics and
just like Christian fanatics.
religion.
So you have a better chance of getting us killed in this country by a white Christian radicalized man. We can't. Are we going to ban Christians? So that's where I'm looking at this. This is, to me, this looks like a Muslim ban. We'll see what the Supreme Court has to say. I'm not going to give any judgment on that until the Supreme Court does something, but it's pretty clear to me, because if it's about safety, then we're going to ban Christians too, because more Christians kill in this country than Muslims do. So
it's about who's coming from outside.
Right.
Though.
But the 6 countries that
Christians are already here.
Well, yeah, no, but the 6 countries that are on this list, we're not facing terrorist attacks from them. Saudi Arabia should be on that list. If they were really we care about the safety of Americans, and this is what this ban is about, they would have all of the countries on there and not just 6. So.
Yeah, but if you look at what Europe is going through.
Oh yeah.
They're having an identity crisis in
Well,
a lot of
oh
those
yes.
countries.
Oh, definitely.
So,
and that's why I'm saying with what the increase in what's going on in Europe, we need to try a different tactic, right? We need a different strategy. I'm for that. I'm for letting the Supreme Court decide this in October, and then that's the ultimate. And then the Democrats have to accept that, right? Like once the Supreme Court rules, you got to let it go. Right. You know, like that's the law of the land. Like you can go up the chains of command, but once you get to the Supreme Court, it's done, and you got to stop yelling about it. You just have to accept it, right? Okay, so what was the other one that you wanted to talk about this morning, Frank?
Oh, I just mentioned that the other one is the one that's under the picture there, justice to hear cases.
Yeah. What do you guys think of this? So the background on this was a while ago, right? Like a year or 2 ago, maybe. Yeah, something like that. But it takes a while. So there was was it Colorado? Yeah, Colorado Baker. There was a gay couple that wanted them to make a cake for their wedding or their ceremony, whatever they were having, and he refused. And he said, it's against my religious views. So what do you guys think of that, Ivan?
Well, doesn't every business owner have the right to refuse service to anybody?
Well, okay. Here's the gray area, and this comes out of the civil rights movement, right? Is people said, we're not going to serve you because you're black in the civil rights era, right? And so we passed legislation that pretty much said in a public sphere, you can't discriminate, but it's public. So what do you think? So private business, I'm not sure where they fall under that. What do you think, David?
Being a black guy.
Yeah.
I have no choice being a black guy.
Right.
Same sex is a choice.
No, it's not. It is not a choice.
If
it's
you
not
look at the biblical standpoint.
No, take religion out of this.
Yes. There is
you are not born
because
he's saying he can't do it because of his
Let me
religion.
tell you a personal experience. My mom and her girlfriend are gay, okay? And if you knew her my mom's girlfriend, the second you looked at her, you would know that person is a homosexual. You can just tell. She's very manly. She was very much into women her entire life. So when people say it's a choice, it is not a choice. I vehemently disagree with that. Show me the science behind it and the religious part of it. What did Jesus say about homosexuals and loving your neighbor, right?
He never said anything about
but he says, well, that's what I mean. He said nothing about homosexuals.
God said it in back.
But what if you don't believe in God? So why are you can't use a blanket religious, I'm a Christian, so I don't agree with this. And I'm not even saying in this case, I'm just saying in general, this fires me the fuck up. Because I have been raised with gay people, I've been around them my entire life, and when people sit there and say, it's a choice, you don't know. You don't know. So, being heterosexual is a choice.
Yes.
That's not a choice, because I grew up liking men. I've always liked men. It just is what it is. And you guys can disagree with me all you want because you're heterosexuals, but unless you've been around people that have been discriminated against their whole life, I was discriminated against because I had a gay mom. Oh, fuck you and your stupid lesbian moms, people vandalizing our homes.
Well, no, that's not
So, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. How does it hurt you two if someone's gay?
It don't hurt me at all.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It hurts zero.
It doesn't hurt me.
It doesn't even hurt the community. Because not everyone's a Christian, Frank.
I know that everyone's a Christian.
So you can't use a Christian argument when it comes to gay people in this country. We're a secular country. He is, and we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say.
So the thing is, if you say now that that he's wrong, then you're interfering now.
I didn't say he's wrong.
Please.
Go on. See, I get fired up over
If
this.
the Supreme Court says that he was wrong because of his religious views, now you're interfering with the separation of church and state, because he's saying it's part of his religion to refuse them.
Right.
And now, if they say that he's wrong, then now you're interfering with that.
Well, they've already ruled something similar when it comes to the Hobby Lobby case a few years ago, right? I'm sorry, it is not hurting this guy to make a cake for a gay couple. It's not hurting him. And it's not hurting your religion. It's really not. And if your worldview is that, poor me, I'm making a cake for a gay couple, and this is hurting me and my religious beliefs.
It's not like they couldn't have gone somewhere
else. Well, I agree with you on that. They could have went somewhere else. But here's the point. Here's the point. 50 years ago, if I'm black and I walked into a store, they could say legally, I'm not going to serve you because you're black. This is not about I'm gay or I'm not gay or I don't believe in gay people should have these same rights or whatever it is. The point is it's as a country, are we going to allow discrimination against people because we don't agree with their lifestyle? Yeah. And that was the whole civil rights era. All right, so I just don't agree with this. And if the Supreme Court agrees, that's on the Supreme Court. That's not. They're the ultimate law of the land. I would be very disappointed if the Supreme Court rules in favor of this.
There's a difference between your lifestyle and the color of your skin.
No, there's not, Frank. Gay people are gay. They're just born that way.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. Show me the science.
What's that?
Show me the science without using a religious background.
So why are you tying my hands?
I'm not, because religion.
You just said I can't use religion.
Because that's not science.
It is
Frank.
about religion.
It's not. It's not. It's not. It's your religious beliefs, which of the 4,000 religions in the world, yours is right. Everyone else's is wrong.
4,000?
Yeah, there's 4,000, like over 4,000 religions in this world. So one religion saying you're
Catholicism, Judaism, those are the ones that have a problem with this.
So do Muslims. So do other countries.
Well, yeah, Muslims.
So do Hindus. So do Buddhists.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean they're right. My point is using a religious argument to say God in this book, which has never been like you can believe it all you want. You can believe the Bible all you want, and that's fine.
Okay.
That's your right.
Okay.
But you can't use that as a scientific argument because God said in this part of the Bible that gay people are wrong. It's just dumb. You can't use that as a scientific argument.
It's dumb.
Yeah, because it's not a scientific argument, Frank. It's
well,
not.
Yeah,
it's the Bible.
What other book has lasted as long as the Bible?
It doesn't matter.
Oh!
No, that doesn't matter. Because it's not scientific. It's because you believe that this book written 2,000 years ago.
What other book has lasted as long?
It doesn't matter.
Why not?
Just because it's lasted a long time, I could write a book today about how I think gay people are pieces of shit, and it could last for 8,000 years.
And you'll still be behind by 6,000 years.
Well, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't buy your religious argument on this because it's not scientific. Because what's the saying? Anytime you go back, if you can't argue your point scientifically and you fall back on a religious argument, that just shows me you have no argument. Right? Where's the science behind your argument that gay people are choosing a lifestyle?
Here's this then. If homosexuality was something genetic, they'd have been bred out by now.
It's not necessarily even genetic, it's just the way some people are born. It's true, Frankie. You don't have to believe it. You can cling to the Bible all you want, but it doesn't make it true. David. Well, I mean, I was raised around it. I've been around it my entire life. These people are not just choosing to be gay.
With him, them being gay,
yeah,
doesn't stop his religion.
No.
It doesn't stop.
By creating a cake, he's supporting them.
But he's not supporting. He's just making.
He's being a businessman.
He's just making a cake.
Yes.
But
Gay people's
He's
money
saying it's
spent just
okay.
as well.
By making the cake and supporting their wedding, he's saying it's okay. And his religion says it's not okay.
Okay,
But
so
that's the way he sees things, but it
Right.
doesn't make it right.
no.
But from his point of view, it is.
So
I had a sergeant major, for example, tell me that perception is reality. And that's his perception, and that's his
okay,
reality.
no, that's not reality in the court of law.
I
Just
didn't
'cause that's
say
his
on court of law,
perception.
I said his
No.
perception, his
I don't
reality.
agree with that.
chooses to see that as his reality. He has a choice to either say, okay, if I make this cake, I support gay people. That's one reality. And the other reality is I'm going to make a cake, period.
And when you count your money at the end of the day, you don't know what money came from gay people or what money came from straight people. You know, so if you're going to make a business decision based on that, I guess that's your decision, but your business is going to get hurt over it because you're not accepting people because their money is different. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just makes zero sense to me.
It's just like when Beauty and Beast came out.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
new
right,
one.
the new one?
And that guy was gay in it. There's one guy that owned a movie studio, movie theater, said they ain't gonna play it because the gay
Right.
guy's in it. He lost all kinds of money.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know.
What? How is that? How does that?
And I'm sorry, but like, you're not being persecuted against this country
Yeah.
because of that.
How is making a cake?
Right.
It just don't make sense
No.
to me.
So we'll see. I mean, when is this going to be?
October.
October. Yeah, so I mean, we'll see in October how that comes. Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they. It's going to be interesting because they did vote in favor of Hobby Lobby and not being able to provide birth control to their employees because of their religious beliefs. So if it goes in that trend, they'll probably rule for the guy, which I don't agree with. But I mean, I'm not in the Supreme Court, and they don't give a shit what I have to say. Another thing I want to point out too is, let's say, okay, if you are a Christian, that's fine, and you don't agree with gay people and their lifestyle, that's fine too. But I have a really hard time with people that will make that statement, but then they vote for a guy like Trump who on tape says, I grab women by the pussy. That's not very Christian behavior either. So, you know, I don't know. Something to consider. Okay. I do get fired up about this because I was raised with it and I was discriminated against just because of my mom's lifestyle. And I will argue to the bitter end about this. And I will.
Didn't they try to pass a bill here in Arizona about businesses having the right to refuse service to gay people?
I think so. It was like a Senate bill, but I don't know if it passed.
No,
Does anyone know? Frank, do you know?
I don't think it did.
No.
It was like when the Super Bowl was gonna be here, and
Right.
they were
Super Bowl was talking about pulling out.
yeah, they were talking about playing it.
Oh, well, I mean, that's how, I guess, didn't the NCAA or the NBA do something like that with North Carolina's bill? You know, so, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this works out, especially because I also read that Justice Kennedy might retire.
Yeah.
Did he announce that today
No,
or
he
no?
hasn't announced it yet. but
Okay, so we'll see.
that's going to be a big difference.
Big difference,
Because
yeah.
he's the swing vote.
He is, yeah, he's the swing. He's kind of the moderate,
And
so,
if Trump get his way in there,
I know.
that's going to affect people for 30 years.
Yeah, so,
Because that guy that's
oh, yeah.
retired been there 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, they're a lifetime
30
appointment.
years.
Yeah. Yep. So October will be a big month for all these cases. Now, I thought there was one more case too. I guess not. I forget which one I'm talking about. But then here's another thing that's been trending too, the health bill. So it's in the Senate, and they're voting on it this week. So if you do not agree with it, you should be calling your senators and voicing your opinions. But from what I read, the Republican from Nevada will not support this bill because he said that too many of his constituents are going to lose their coverage. Rand Paul is not going to vote for it because he said it's not conservative enough.
Yeah.
And then there's I think 3 that are always kind of in the swing. It's like 3 female Republicans. So we'll see how this goes. I want to say they're going to vote on Thursday. But they haven't, the problem with this bill, and the Democrats have done this too, I'm not knocking the Republicans on this, this has been done in secret. And both parties are equally guilty of doing this, where they will write these bills in secret and then they try to jam them through as fast as they can. It's usually whoever's in charge of that house, right? And the Democrats did this too. I believe they did it with part of the ACA as well. So I'm not giving this is a bipartisan view of this. I think that any bills like this, which is like 1/6 of our economy, is healthcare, should be able to be read by the general public
Yeah.
before it is voted on by the senators. And
Because we don't know what's true or false.
no, exactly. And we only know what New York Times or Washington Post or Fox News, what their analysis is, right? So we don't, I mean, I haven't read the bill. I don't really know what's in it. So, but I think if this gets passed, this still has to go through the House, right? Because the first time they ran it through the House, it didn't pass. So now they're trying to pass it through the Senate, but then it would still have to pass the second House as well. So we'll see. I've been calling my senators every day, and I'm sure they're like, they see my number and they're like, and it's always the same girl. I always call the two sign offices because it's easier to get in. It's always this woman named Julie at Jeff Blake's office, and she's so nice. And I'm like, hi, Julie, it's me. And you can tell she's like, but she's so polite. So call your senators if it's something that you're concerned about. But like I said, my view on this is the ACA is not a good bill, but it was a start in giving people health care. And that's really the idea, right, of health care is expanding coverage for people. So I think what we should do instead of just scrapping it is we should say, let's look at the top 5 parts of Obamacare that are bad. What can we do to change those? How can we lower costs? And a lot of this has to do with insurance companies too, right? So like, what can we do as citizens and as a government to say, as insurance companies, you can't raise your rates, or you know, like, why can't we? I don't know the economics behind it, but I'm just wondering, why can't we do that to the insurance companies? Because they lobby, right, and they give a lot of money to both parties, right? Both Republicans and Democrats take money from the insurance lobby. So, you know, it'll just be interesting to see how.
My understanding, the reason they increased all the rates and stuff is because now they have to cover prior
Existing
conditions. So they have a higher cost now, so they have to recoup the money.
Well, but when you look at the CEOs and they're making billions of dollars a year,
I
that's the problem. You know, like, I get the costs and, like, yes, supply and demand, and you have to raise costs, right, to cover your costs. But maybe your CEO doesn't get a bonus that year.
Yeah.
You know, because kicking people off for pre-existing conditions is, like, the most heinous thing, right? Like, or refusing to cover someone, or, you know, it's just sad in this country. If you get cancer, you can go bankrupt. You know, like, it's just. It's just an awful reality. So that's why I think they should just improve the ACA. And then they could take a lot of benefit for that too. The ACA is actually relatively popular in the country, and I think politically they could be like, hey, we recognize most people in this country want to keep this bill. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. And I think that would actually be a bigger win for the Republicans, showing that, hey, we're going to look at what the constituents want, we're going to fix it instead of just whatever the black guy did, we're going to get rid of. Because that's what it feels like to me, right? It's because this is Obamacare. And actually, a lot of Americans don't realize that Obamacare and the ACA are the same thing.
That's sad,
They think they hear Obamacare, they have a negative. They hear ACA and like, oh, it's great. I don't like it when they do that. Like, they call this Trump care. Just call it the bill.
What it is,
you know, like, just call it the bill name. I've never liked that. David, what do you think?
If American people knew what you showed us,
right,
the demographics of where our money goes, and if we're sending money to other countries for their health care,
I know. Isn't that messed up?
That's way messed up.
It's all about education. Like, you know, that's what, like, I love about this class, and I think in general, like in high school, like those types of things should also be taught. Like, hey, this is, when you become an adult and you pay taxes, this is where your tax money goes. It goes to foreign countries, it goes to the military, it goes to this, it goes to this. But, what, you know, what can we do if we, where do we change the numbers so that we have health care? Because what I think is going to come out of this is more and more people are jumping on, we need socialized health care. Because they're realizing that ACA is not a good bill, this bill's not good either. What can we do to just ensure everyone, like, I'm all for paying more taxes, so everyone in my neighborhood, I don't care if they're a piece of shit, you're a human being, you have the right to health care, right? So I think that this is actually inadvertently shifting the country into that conversation, right? Is we have a bad ACA bill, we have a bad HCA bill, was that like the American Health Care Act, so HCA. Why don't we just scrap it all and start over, right? And just do a socialized healthcare system, take some of that money that we're giving to other countries and put it into that system, right? Because we're already paying that money to go to other countries. Why can't we just take that money and have it here?
I have a question, kind of off topic, but what's the difference between a socialism and democratic socialism?
Okay, so there's a difference between socialism. Okay, there's two ways you can look at this. Because in this country, a lot of times democratic socialism is confused with communism. Communism is not good. Communism looks nice on paper, right? Communism means the state owns everything. They divvy out to everyone what they're supposed to have. But it never works out that way, because humans are inherently greedy, right? And so if you're going to be in charge of a communist country, you're going to start taking for you. Never ever works out right. democratic socialism is kind of like the happy medium that I look at between a full capitalist system and a full communist system. It's still, there's still private ownership of businesses. In a communist country, there's no private ownership. So if you live in the Soviet Union and you're like, I'm going to open a cupcake shop, you can't do that. Everything, the government owns everything. And so you can see how that becomes a problem. In a democratic socialist model, kind of like, I'll use the Scandinavian countries as an example, Denmark, Norway, you pay more in taxes, you do. That is a main concern that the US has. That's, just when you look at American history, taxes have always been the crux of issues, right? Because that was the whole point of the American Revolution, right? It's taxes, no taxation without representation. So a democratic socialist model is you pay higher in taxes, but then you have a socialized healthcare system where you don't have to pay for insurance. So the idea is that your taxes are helping everyone for the greater good. Right, exactly. I like that model, we actually have that model. Everything your taxes pay for is democratic socialism. So the roads we drive on to get to school, that's paid for by taxes. Libraries, fire departments, anything that's paid out of, like a tax model, that's a democratic socialist model. So we're kind of like, we have it, but we're not a fully democratic socialist country, like a Norway or Denmark or something like that. But I would like to see our healthcare go that model. It's not going to be perfect either. Like, because a lot of opponents in the U.S. about socialized healthcare will say, okay, well, you have long waits. In some countries, that's a complaint, like, if I want to go in and get this surgery done, I might have to wait a while. But another thing, too, is when you do have that, you don't have a bill, right? So you're not going to have to pay, like, I had a surgery in 2011 to remove ovarian cysts, and it was a $50,000 surgery for one day in the hospital. And my insurance at that time, luckily, was really, really good through my husband's work, and I only had to pay $2,000 out of pocket. But that's still a lot. Like, for a lot of people, like, how many people really have $2,000 just to be like, here you go? And I use my health savings account. So I was able to do that, right? So in a democratic socialist healthcare model, you don't necessarily have that. But, if you want elective surgeries, like if you want to get like a breast implant or things like that, you can still do that. And you can still have insurance that would provide you for if you want to do anything elective. I just see the conversation moving that way. I don't see that happening in the United States for a long time, but I can see eventually us getting to the point where everyone's just fed up with these healthcare models, that each party is like putting these flawed models out, and then it's not really working for a lot of people. So we'll see. What do you think, Frank?
Oh, well, I just looked up the tax rate in Norway.
Oh, what is it?
You mentioned it. Oh, only 42%.
Yeah, but you know what?
So you want to spend? You want to put?
Yeah.
I'm
I'm okay with that.
You're going to lose half your income.
I'm okay with that. You know why? Because, well, Frank, you're just looking at this as an American view. Look at it through a world view. Look at the countries that rank highest in happiness indexes, and they're almost all the Scandinavian countries. I don't mind paying more for my neighbors, for everyone to be able to have great libraries, to have a great police system where they make a decent amount of money, to have health care. I don't care. Like, I'm all for that. I thought that was like a Christian thing too, right? Like, wouldn't Jesus be a socialist? Wouldn't he want everyone to have health care? I get the cost, and that's something that would have to be hammered out, right? But to me, it's just like, I was watching this one documentary from Iceland, and these people were like, I would never live in the United States. You guys don't care about your neighbors. And it's kind of true when you look at how other countries view us. We look like we don't give a shit about, you only care about yourself and your own family, right? I do care about my entire community. I don't care if you're the homeless guy in the corner begging for change or you're the richest CEO. I'm happy to pay more taxes in order to have those services. Because I don't want anyone to go bankrupt because they have cancer. It's terrible.
When I was over at GCC, we had, I think it was the accounting teacher. Okay. Everyone had certain assignments. Everyone had assignments they had to do.
Right.
And they had tests and things like that. Well, they all complained about it, so he made them a deal. That the class would get one grade, because they were all talking about socialism.
Okay.
And so the first test, a few people studied for, and they got a decent grade, but some people didn't study.
Right.
But the average grade ended up being really low. Well, the people who were working their ass off to make the class, and then there were people who were just like gonna sit back and let the other kids.
Yeah, that's a valid argument.
Okay, and so what happened was the entire class failed because the people who were doing their work, said, you know what, we ain't gonna work this hard if we're not gonna get anything from it. and so everyone failed.
So that's a valid argument. It's kind of not really the same as democratic socialism because there's always pieces of shit in every society. There's always going to be people that milk the system.
Sponge off the
yeah,
people who
absolutely.
are working.
But that's not a reason to say we shouldn't have a healthcare system for all because I have to pay. I'm already in a 35% tax bracket. I'll pay a little bit, 7% more, so everyone can have this. I guess I just don't, from my worldview, I don't think it's that big of a problem. When you look at the countries that have this, they're looking at us like the wealthiest country in the world can't even give benefits to their citizens.
No, I agree that we should do better about taking care of our own.
Yeah, we do. And then, so that's what I mean, like this, kind of back to what David had said, this reshuffling of our resources, right? Like, as a country, like, let's be educated and look at where our money is going. Because I think so many people are just in the dark, right? The money comes out of your check. You don't really necessarily think, like, how much are we spending on our military? How much are we spending on, foreign lands? How much are we spending on our infrastructure, right? Because that would actually create a lot of jobs in this country, right? Is if we invest in, like, new bridges and new roads and things like that. So there's just I think it's worth a dialogue in this country that where are we spending our money? And what's more important to us as a country? Is it giving more foreign aid and having a bigger military, or is it saving some of that money and investing in us, right?
Oh, I agree, we
so,
should.
yeah. But it's a conversation, right? It's something that, there's going to be different views and nothing will be perfect. And I think that's the problem when people look at legislation and bills like this. They're like, well, I don't like this part. Okay, well, you don't have to like every part, right? Because you're not going to please everyone. You have to kind of look at the collective. Does it help the entire country? The ACA did help the country, but it also hurt some people, right? So, okay, so let's look at that. Who did it hurt? It hurt my family, right, when it came to our benefits. So how do you address that? Let's address that, right, instead of scrapping. Because this is going to take 23 million people off of insurance. 23 million people are going to lose their benefits. So to me, that's a backward step. We shouldn't lose, no one should lose their benefits. Everyone should be able to keep it. And the ACA didn't even give everyone benefits. There's still 30 million people in the U.S. that don't have coverage. What I don't like about the ACA is the penalty. If you don't have insurance, if you let's say I as an individual say, I'm not going to buy insurance, I shouldn't have to be penalized for that, right? So there's things in there that I think Republicans would be really smart to say, let's fix it.
It should be a choice.
Yes, it should be a choice.
And it should be a choice. Yeah. And but listening, I listen to KTR, and they're talking about these people who are paying $1,000 or more.
Yeah.
A month.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a house payment.
Exactly. That's higher than my student loan
much.
That is way too much. Way too much. And then the healthcare, it's just a debacle right now. Right. Everything that we have going on in this country. So that's why I'm like, if you're not going to fix the ACA, let's go full democratic socialism. Healthcare for all, right? Be great. All right. So, good chat this morning, guys. I love it. I'm getting fired up on the last day of class. You guys want to know what today in history is? The U.S. Expeditionary Force arrived in France during World War I today, but they don't really start in major combat until October. But this kind of starts to relieve the pressure on the British and the French, if you know anything about World War I. They had kind of been, at the end of 2016, at the end of 1916, there were major battles, the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of Somme, where there was over 1 million casualties. And so both sides were very, I don't want to say broken, but hurting. The U.S. comes in, kind of help the Allies out. So that's today in history. Okay, so what I thought would be fun to do is talk about the evolution of political parties, because I think it's important to understand how we got to today's political parties, right? Do you guys know the roots of the modern Democratic and modern Republican Party? Do you guys know when the Democratic Party today was formed? Do you guys know when the Republican Party of today was formed?
Not as far back as we think.
It's actually, well, kind of. That's what we're going to talk about today. Right? So I'll give you those roots because historians right now say we're in the fifth party system. Some say sixth, depending on how you look at it. So we've had all these evolutions through American history when it comes to our political parties. We have parties that were started that are no longer existing, and we have parties that kind of merged and created the parties of today. So I just want to give you kind of an overview of that. It's something I really like, I'm really interested in, and I think it'll give you guys kind of more of a basis to create your opinions on the modern day Democratic Party and the modern day Republican Party, okay? So in the Constitution, or when the Constitution was written, and when the country was, we win the American Revolution, we write this Constitution, what was the view on political parties at that time in the 1780s, early 1790s?
Was there any of them?
The idea was that there would not be political parties. naive, right? Adorable and naive. But that was the idea, is we're not going to have political parties, we're not going to have this fighting, right? But it's just human nature, right? It's factions. So when you think of a political party, think of a faction, right? Think of, you're naturally going to gravitate towards people that kind of have the same ideals as you, right? You know, generally speaking. So very, very quickly, political parties begin. And do you guys know what the first two political parties were in American history?
Wasn't there a Whigs party?
That comes a bit later. That's in the second wave, so you're close.
Okay.
Federalists? Okay, and so the anti-federalists are also referred to as the Democratic Republicans. Perfect, yeah. So you have these two political parties. What does George Washington fall under?
Federalist.
He's a Federalist. Now, not necessarily because he's a card-carrying registered Federalist, because there was no conventions at this time in this early political system. It was more just factions. But when George Washington leaves office, he gives a famous address where he says that he warns against the creation of political parties and what it can do to the government. So I've already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state with particular reference to the founding of them on geographical discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the hateful or the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its root in the strongest passions of the human mind, right? That's just human nature, right? You're going to be a part of a faction. It exists in their different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed, but in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness, and it is truly their worst enemy. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural of party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual. And sooner or later, the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns his disposition to the purposes of his own elevation and the ruins of public liberty. That's a powerful statement, right? You guys know who wrote this? Because it wasn't Washington. This is his address. It's Alexander Hamilton wrote Washington's farewell address, right? So the idea at the beginning was that there shouldn't be political parties, right? But obviously we know that there are. So the first party system, he was right, is the Federalists under Alexander Hamilton and George Washington and John Adams. And then the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. This system lasts from the 1790s, when the Constitution goes into effect and Washington takes office, to around 1820. That's when you'll start to see these two parties kind of fizzle out. But let me give you kind of the main features. So again, at the time, parties are considered kind of disloyal and very suspect, and each party believes something different. So the Federalists, under Hamilton, believed in a strong central government. That makes sense, because Hamilton is the guy that created our financial system as we know it today. Right? So he wanted a strong federal government, and what he did was he made the federal government assume all the state's debt, right, to create a federal line of credit, but then that creates a stronger central government. So that's, Federalists believed in that, right? They wanted to promote commerce and manufacturing. They supported a national bank. They were actually suspicious of democracy, and not democracy how we think of it today, but straight up democracy, like allowing every single person to have a vote, right? That's why we're a republic and not a democracy, is that they were very they were very distrustful of just straight democracy, because when you look at these men, right, they're the elite of their generation, right? And they don't want the poor people or the minorities to have a say, because then those people might choose something that's different than the vision that they have for the United States, right? That's why, like, who could vote in the 1790s?
White Christian men.
Yeah, white Christian men and landowners. So even if, like, you were a white Christian man over the age of 21, but you only rented, in a lot of states, it's a state by state. Some states did allow you to vote if you pay taxes, even if you didn't own property. But so for the most part, you know, this party system is very much dominated by the elites. It's dominated by the southern states, because when you look at the first presidents up through 1820, all of them but Adams was a slave owner. So they were dominated by southern slave owners, and so that's where you see a lot of the early tensions are going to come between North and South over the slave issue. So if the Federalists support commerce and manufacturing, what geographic part of the 13 colonies, or now states, do you think North. Exactly. So their base is in the north. Now, when I say like a geographic area, there's obviously exceptions, right? There's going to be Federalists in the south.
Yeah.
There's going to be Democratic Republicans in the north, generally speaking. This one, you know. So very strong in New England and coastal cities. Now, as belief in broad-based democracy spread, this idea that, hey, any citizen should vote, right? Or at least any white man that's over the age of 21, whether you own property or not, this party will start to crumble because that's kind of the base of their belief system, right? The Democratic Republicans, they also refer to themselves as Republicans, but they're not the Republican Party of today. That comes later, so I want to be clear on that, okay? They believed America's future was agrarian and not necessarily a manufactured commerce base. They see, hey, we should spread farmers and large planters should be the base of this nation. And they were led by Thomas Jefferson, who was a slave owner, right? He had over 200 slaves, so he was like elite of the elite at that time. They believed more in states' rights, small government, right? Yeah, well, and so you actually kind of see a parallel, like just loosely here, okay? When I look at both these parties, the Federalists, I would put maybe more with the Democratic Party today, just some of their things. And the Democratic Republicans a little closer to the Republicans today because of states' rights, smaller government, that type of idea, okay? They have strong support from farmers, the working class, and strong support in the South and the West. So that's your early first party system, right? That's going to fizzle away by around 1820. Now the second party system, that's the Whigs. The Whigs come into play here. This is where the Democratic Party of today is created, in the second party system. They are the party of Andrew Jackson. Okay? So he's the 7th president. So under him, the Democrats are going to become a lot stronger. Okay, so the second party system is from 1828 to about 1854, right before the Civil War. And this system came from a split within the Democratic Republican Party. Right? So the Federalists kind of fizzle away. They're going to kind of turn into the Whigs eventually. The Democrats are going to come out of this split within the Democratic Republican Party. So there's two main factions. You have Andrew Jackson, who has a lot of popular support because he's a military hero. And then, do you guys know who this is? You want to guess? This is Henry Clay. You guys heard his name in American history? He ran for president a few times. He's known as the Great Compromiser. He's the one that kind of creates a lot of the compromises between North and South when it comes to the slave issue. But he's a very influential Speaker of the House, like a Paul Ryan, Newt Gingrich type of character. Okay, so he has, even though he's never president, he still has a lot of influence in the political system. Okay, so Jackson's followers formed the Democratic Party. Clay's followers formed the Whig Party. And the Whigs, though, only elect, the Whigs have 4 presidents. Only 2 are elected, though. They both die. And then their VPs, who are Whigs, take over for them. So the 4 Whig presidents are William Harrison, who died after like a month. John Tyler then takes over for him, so he's not elected. And then Zachary Taylor, he also dies. And then Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore, right? Like I think he's the president that has the least amount of biographies written about him. Because everyone's like, who the hell is Millard Fillmore, right? But he was a president, okay? Now, the Democrats eventually did come to support some of the Whig policies. Whigs supported industrialization. They supported railroads, right? Because they kind of come from that Federalist background, so they support commerce, manufacturing. Democrats eventually will kind of support that and suck Whig people into their own base. They're actually very smart at this time in history. Not so much anymore, right? But slavery and expansion to the West is going to split the Whig Party in the early 1850s. The Whigs are split over this issue of, do we expand slavery? Do we just leave it where it exists? Do we abolish it? There's a big infighting between the Whig Party. And they're actually going to fizzle out, and the Whigs will just kind of go off on their own. Now, during this period, we see most voters beginning to strongly identify with one party. Prior to that, there'd be kind of more like, I'm a registered Federalist, or I'm a registered Democratic Republican. It would be more like, yeah, I kind of like their views here, I kind of like their views, I'll mix and mash it. But by this time, by the second system, people are very much, I'm one party or I'm the other. Okay? This is when the first party nomination conventions were held. So you guys are used to that, right? Every 4 years, right, there's the nomination. This starts under the second party system. So they actually kind of start to institutionalize and organize the political system in a way that we would recognize today. we would not recognize the Federalist and Democratic Republican system today. It's just foreign. It's just done. This is the roots of our political system today, come out of the second party system. Okay? So Democrats at this time typically believed in small government, states' rights. They were economically conservative. They opposed banks. This was a big issue with Andrew Jackson, if you know anything about his presidency. They opposed the national bank. They believed the tariff was a tax on the poor to help the rich. So the tariff is a big source of contention at this time in history. They get a lot of their support from farmers, the rural areas, frontiers. And actually what's interesting, most urban immigrants, especially Catholics, supported Democrats at this time in history. The idea was that when people literally got off the boat, the parties would be there like with like a piece of bread and like a soup, like a hot cup of soup, like welcome to America, join this party, right? So immigrants were majorly fought over by the political parties at this time. Do you guys ever see that movie? It came out a while ago, Gangs of New York.
Yes.
And Daniel Day-Lewis is like,
yes.
Okay, that's kind of the idea. They talked about that in that movie. This idea that you have a party boss in every major city that's kind of running the show for that specific party. That was a really good movie. He just announced he's not acting anymore.
Yeah, I know.
I'm bummed. He's a good actor. Daniel Day-Lewis, love him. Okay, Whigs felt that Congress should be stronger than the president, where Andrew Jackson thought the president should be stronger than Congress. So there's kind of this idea behind that. They promote industry. They support tariff, right? So they're pretty much picking up where the Federalists left off, and the Democrats are picking up where the Democratic Republicans left off. Now, what's really interesting about this party system is as the U.S. moves westward and these new western states enter the Union, they typically drop the property requirement to vote. They'll say, yeah, as long as you're a white male citizen over the age of 21, you can vote. So that forced the older states to be like, well, you know, we got to drop our requirements too because people are either going to leave our state or whatever. So because of that, what you see is a very high voter turnout during this time period. Typically about 80%, which is, that's big. That's the biggest in American history. Because right now we're in like a pretty historic low in the amount of people that vote. At this time, almost everybody voted. Politics was kind of like almost entertainment too, right? They'd have rallies, they'd have fun things for people like, to get them into the party. So it was kind of an idea like public entertainment as well. Okay. All right. Third party system. You might, that was a political cartoon about Andrew Jackson that the Whigs made. So saying that he wanted to be like a king, right? That he wanted the presidency to be a little stronger, whereas the Whigs wanted the presidency to be a little weaker. Okay, third party system. This is where the Republican Party of today is created. Okay, so you saw the Democratic Party of today, created under Andrew Jackson in the 1820s. Now you have the Republicans, and so this is where the third party system is where the modern parties of today are ingrained, right? So you have the Democrats, you have the Republicans. You also have another group called the Populists. So what you see throughout the rest of American history is you always have the Democrats and the Republicans. You always have a few third parties sprinkled in there too, but they never gain enough ground to challenge either of the major political parties, okay? So what your participation nugget, your last one is who was the first president in U.S. history from the current Republican Party? And it was Abraham Lincoln. So he was, the Republican Party of today really began in 1854, but it begins with Abraham Lincoln. So that is your last participation nuggets. I'm sure you guys are going to have fun putting those all together, right? Be cursing my name. On Wednesday night when I go to bed at like 10, I'll be like, they're all cursing my name right now as they're scrambling to get everything in by midnight. Okay, let's go back to that original slide. Did everyone get this? Yes? Okay. Okay, so these parties. So this system emerged from divisions over slavery, essentially. You're going to see the Whigs are going to fizzle out because of their internal divisions. The Democrats are going to suck in some of the Whig Party, and then other people are going to, the other branch of the Whig Party will form the Republican Party, okay? Now, these are, again, the same parties are in existence today, but their issues, beliefs, and their supporters have changed many, many times, right? So these parties both, like when you look at what they stood for at that time, they've changed a few different times on their political ideologies and the people that they reach, okay? All right, so after the Civil War, the Democratic Party, do you think they're going to be big in the North or the South? Yeah, the Democrats typically will be the southern base. Republicans are going to be the northern base because of the slave issue, because of the Civil War, because of Reconstruction, okay? Is that the same today? No, it's kind of flipped that, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute, how we kind of get to that point. In the North and the West, support came from farmers, workers, and Catholic immigrants. They support a low tariff. They're economically conservative, and they tended to oppose reforms like prohibition because that's too big of government, which I agree with. Prohibition never should have happened. But at this time, before prohibition became a federal thing, states and localities were passing dry laws as well. That almost always happens before anything becomes federal. There's a lot of support at a local and a state level, okay? The Republicans, again, they adopt a lot of the Whig platform. They support industry, urban growth. They support increase in education, the division of Western lands into homesteads. That was a big part of them. They were more likely to support moral reforms like prohibition. And that makes sense when you look back at the Republicans that are running the government during the American Civil War, right? They're going to be the ones pushing for 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments and rights for black people. Now, you also have a populist party. They're supported by farmers in the South and the West. They wanted to build a coalition of industrial workers and get that base from the northern states, but they weren't ultimately successful in that. What they advocated was the government ownership of the railroad and regulation of commerce. Because, do you guys know anything about the Gilded Age in American history? You guys ever heard of that time period? It's really the period right after the American Civil War and Reconstruction up until the Progressive Era in the early 1900s. And there's almost zero government regulations on business. So businesses could pay you, there was no federal minimum wage, right? There's no workman's comp. Like if Ivan was working in a coal mine in like 1880 and you had a wife and 6 kids and you lost your leg or you died in the coal mine, what would happen to your family? They would probably starve to death, right? Like, or there's no government safety nets, right? Like what we would consider welfare today was none of that existed. Right, if you needed any assistance, it would be on a local level. Churches typically were the welfare of the U.S. during the Gilded Age. And so populists wanted more regulation because the populists are people that are hurt by the lack of government regulations. Because now we're kind of over-regulated, but there needed to be a happy medium. You can't, no regulations means that business owners can do whatever they want to you. They don't have to pay you overtime. They can pay you literally $1 a day if they wanted to, right? And so that created a lot of labor strikes, the rise of labor unions, right, to agitate for these. So the populists are for that because they're people that are hurt by the lack of government regulations. They supported expansion of the money supply. They wanted to end the gold standard. That was a big issue at that time. They did elect representatives to Congress, but they never were able to get anyone at a high level in government, as far as being president or a cabinet member or something like that. They'll fizzle out, but they go in waves. There's always a populist movement for the most part, right? And it can be conservative, it can be liberal, it can be right down the center. It's always that third party that's voicing discontent over 2 parties run the entire country. We'll see what you guys think of that in just a minute, okay? All right, the 4th party system. This lasts, we already did that. You get here. Okay, so the 4th party system essentially is from about 1896 to 1932 with the election of Franklin Roosevelt. Do you guys know who this is? This is Woodrow Wilson. So one of the main Democrats at this time period. And then you guys, tell me you guys know who this is. Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt, right? A Maine Republican at this time period. My favorite president in American history is Teddy Roosevelt. Fascinating man. Whether you agree with his politics or not, fascinating guy. He wrote 35 books his whole life, and he was president. And he was a big conservationist. I love him. He's awesome. Okay, now, the 4th party system really begins with the Republican victory in the election of 1896, and that's William McKinley. And the reason historians look back at this as the beginning of a new political system, because you have the same parties, right? They still stand for essentially the same thing. But that election in 1896 to elect William McKinley, a Republican, was one of the most expensive in history, and it created this idea that we're going to throw money now at it monetized politics more than it was before. It was, I thought I wrote down how much it was, but it was very, very expensive, and it really created the modern politics that we're used to today, right? So again, nothing changes too much, though, between the parties from this 3rd party to 4th party system. Democrats are still going to be solidly in the South. Republicans will still solidly be in the North, and you'll still have your populists that scream and cry but can never make inroads, right? And this new idea that more money in politics is going to help hurts any third parties, right? Because if you don't have the money then to stand up against big political parties, you're not really going to make a big difference, right? Okay. Now, what we start to see in this party system, though, is the rise of a progressive movement. This is where you have prohibition comes into play during this party system. This is when women get the right to vote. This is when we start to see the beginnings of federal laws. By 1937, you have a federal law on minimum wage, child labor, and things like that. But progressives, and Teddy Roosevelt is considered one of the key progressive era presidents, they start really agitating for government regulations. They break up trusts. He was known as a trust buster because there was a Sherman Antitrust Act in the 1890s that was meant to get rid of monopolies, right? Because that was a big problem with business and no regulations, that they just buy up their competition and then they can charge whatever they want, right? So that's really what sets the parties apart in this time period is Republicans tend to be a little more progressive. And I'm not saying progressive as in forward thinking. I'm just saying they're agitating for more progressive movements at this time. They're going to be the ones that support prohibition. Democrats typically won't, right? They're and Democrats, though, in their defense, this time they Woodrow Wilson will become a supporter for the 19th Amendment and giving women the right to vote. Which is a very progressive idea because of the way women assisted in World War I, right? And they put aside some of them did, some didn't, but put aside the agitation for the right to vote during the war, and then after the war, we're like, okay, now it's our time. Now it's time to give us the right to vote. So that's the fourth party system. Okay, the fifth party system is pretty much what we're in today, although I would look at the six-party system as beginning in 2000, with a shift in really with Bill Clinton too, because the liberals we see today are not a liberal like FDR was. They're neoliberals. I don't know if you guys know the difference kind of between that idea. I guess a lot of it has to do with money in politics, and if you're a liberal like FDR, this idea of taking money from corporations in order to write specific bills is kind of a key hallmark of neoliberalism. They're actually more neoliberals today are more conservative than liberals were before. So the fifth party system, you have FDR is going to be really your main Democrat, and under him we go full liberal, right? A lot of welfare because of the Great Depression, right, and the New Deal. I don't know if you guys know a lot about the New Deal, but the idea was that create public programs that would put people back to work, right? But during this is when they really created the social safety net. And this has been a debate between historians for a long time. I don't think the New Deal got us out of the Depression. World War II really got us out of the Depression. But what it did was it expands the role of the federal government in the eyes of the public. Because when the Depression hits, Herbert Hoover was president, and it was 1929, and he famously didn't do anything because he did something a little too late. But at the time when it happened, he's like, we just have to let capitalism work itself out. We'll let the economic system work itself out, but we're not going to do any handouts or anything like that. And then FDR becomes president in 1932. When you look at the political map, he won in a big landslide. Because people blamed Hoover for the Depression, and it was not Hoover's fault. It wasn't any political party's fault. It was really a 10-year in the making, many different factors that lead to the Great Depression. What you now see is under FDR and FDR Democrats and he had 4 terms, right? So he's president for a long time until he died. Now you have an expansion of federal programs, right? And people then began to expect this as a role of the federal government. Because when you look at people in the Depression, I think if the FDR hadn't done that, if his administration hadn't expanded the role of the federal government, I think people would have rioted and maybe tried to overthrow the government because people at that time were so desperate, right? The unemployment rate was officially 25%, but in some cities it was as high as 50%, especially if you were a minority. If you were black or you're Mexican, your unemployment rate was much, much higher. I think people would have been like, this isn't working, we need a new form of government, right? And so he expands the role of the government, kind of placates people at the same time. Now, he gets 4 terms. Is that constitutional?
No. 4 or 3?
He had 4. He was elected 4 times. He died, so he was elected in 32, 36, 40, and 44. He died in 45. Truman took over. And then in the 50s, I think it was the 50s, there was a constitutional amendment. You can only have 2 terms. Like, we're putting the kibosh on that. I agree with that. You should only have 2 terms. Because in the Constitution, it doesn't say anything about 2 terms. Washington stepped down after 2 terms and set the precedent. And everyone just kind of followed that. And I think after 2 terms, you're probably like, screw this job. Right? Like, this is thankless. I'm out of here. And you're probably really stressed out. You just want to go back to like a normal life.
And if you look at the presidents today,
Oh,
like for example, when Obama went in,
yes, not a gray hair. Yeah.
When he came out, his hair was white.
Oh my God, there was a really funny meme. Hold on, I gotta see if I can pull it up because this is hilarious.
And some of the other presidents the same way. They go in with dark hair and they come out with white hair, and it's just.
Okay, so during the Bernie Sanders campaign, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like if Bernie would have won. See, memes can bring us all together, you know? Like, we can all agree this is funny, right? But if Bernie had been president, he would come out looking like 150 years old, right? He's already like 75 years old, so I love that one. I thought that was so funny. But it's true. I mean, look how much they age. And if you look at Lincoln, too.
It's got to be the stress of the job.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Okay. So the 5th party system is when we start to see a shift. So the Democrats are going to dominate, for the most part. You have FDR and you have Truman. And then you have Eisenhower, who's a Republican. And then you have JFK and LBJ, who are Democrats. And then you have Nixon. And the Republicans are, he's a Republican. And after Nixon, well, from Nixon on, the Republicans will dominate for a little while. You have Nixon, who's a 2-term until he resigns, Republican. Then Ford takes over. And then you have Carter. That was just kind of like a, we didn't like Watergate. We'll give the Democrat a chance. We didn't like him. And we go back to Republicans for 12 more years. So the 5th party system is dominated for the Democrats at first, and the Republicans at the end. And that's why I personally look at a 6-party system that we're in now. I think that when the smoke clears, historians will look back and be like, yeah, maybe starting with Bill Clinton after Reagan, you have another domination of Democrats in federal office for a while. And then the pendulum just keeps swinging back and forth, right? And you have Bush for 8 years, and you have Obama for 8 years, and now we're back in the Republicans. So I think we're kind of in a newer system. But this is where the electorate kind of flips. It has a lot to do with the civil rights movement. Because, let me show you this slide. Okay. So in this model, red is Republican, right, and blue is Democrat. 1896 election, you can see the Democrats strong in the South, Republicans strong in the North. And look at that flip by the 2000 election. And a lot of it has to do with civil rights. Not all of it, I mean, just the way kind of the pendulum swings, right? And people move around and ideas change, things like that. But a lot of it had to do with the Southern strategy of Nixon and the Republicans during the 1960s and 1970s. And they really kind of used civil rights as a crux to switch the electorate. So now what we see is Republicans are strong in the South, Democrats are stronger in the North, and then the West is always kind of like a crapshoot, right? Depends. There's this really cool website called 270 to Win It, because that's how much you need to get in the Electoral College. And every election, you can look up the electoral maps. And if you start in like 1900 and look, it's really fascinating to see how this shifts, because this is not a hard or fast rule. Like when you look at the election of 1992 with Bill Clinton, he had a lot of support in the South because he was from Arkansas, right? So a lot of Jimmy Carter had a lot of support in Georgia in the South because he's from Georgia, right? And he's a Democrat. So I want to be clear that there's no hard and fast rule, right, when it comes to this. But the electorate does shift in about the 60s and 1970s, and you can see that through electoral maps. Now, my question to you is, how do you guys feel about the 2-party system today?
I think it's broken.
Okay, it's broken. Now, let me give you this perspective before we go any further. So we are based on an electoral college, right? That is in the Constitution, and senators and Congress people have tried 700 times to change the electoral college. It's not going away. It's just not. Okay, it's just what we have to work with. It's flawed, but it is what it is. If you have a 3- or 4-party system, that completely screws with the electoral college. Because if you don't win a majority, right, or if you don't get to that 270, where does the election go?
It goes to the Congress.
Goes to the House.
Senate.
Yeah, goes to the House. Then the House decides.
Right.
So then the House, depending on how many... So that's what I mean, is like, the 2-party system is flawed, right? But on an electoral college system, it actually works better than if we had 3 or 4, like, or look at Great Britain, things like 6 parties, right? Because you're never going to get then a clear majority. It's always going to go to the House then. And then whichever party dominates the House is the one that's going to choose the president. And so then it's even less about democracy and more just about who controls the House. They're going to pick the president.
Well, in that case, you run 3 parties in November, and then top 2 in the first week of December. Then
right, like a runoff type of idea.
And that way, you know, because this way, you know, because we've already agreed that the 2-party system kind of broken. If you add in the 3rd party, like you said, the electoral, no one's going to get to 270
right.
if you have 3. So you take the 2 and have a runoff there. And that way people have more of a choice.
Right. I agree with that. But who runs the system?
Exactly.
The 2 parties. And so that is really shown in presidential debates. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Jason, what do you think?
Don't countries like Britain and France do stuff like that?
Yeah, France has a runoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do just straight up runoff.
Yeah.
It works fairly well.
It did.
Right?
They did in the last election. There was maybe 4 or 5 people running.
Yeah.
The top 2 went into the final election. And then that was your choice. I like that idea. But getting these 2 parties to agree to that, it's going to hurt them, right? Yeah. So when you look at presidential debates, this is always a problem every presidential cycle because 3rd parties aren't allowed. Unless you got from a previous election, you got 5% of the popular votes. Then you're allowed into. But they've done that as a way because they know they're not going to get 5% of the popular votes, right? And it's a bipartisan committee that runs the committee for presidential elections, and they're working together, right? So there's I think it's a Native American proverb. Maybe you could back me up on this, Virgil. The left and the right wing are part of the same bird. Is that? Have you ever heard that phrase? So when we look at this division, like I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, they're all kind of working against us, right? Like they're all working for their own party, right, and their own interests. But when you look at the breakdown in the U.S., most people are registered independents. But then you're excluded from primaries because the parties get to create those laws, right? So there is a brokenness to our system, but under an electoral system, we do have to have 2 major parties, or we could do a runoff. But getting Congress to write that bill and pass it would take a lot of public outcry, not petitions, but like actual a lot of outcry in the public sphere. What do you think?
Something like what's happening in Italy right now.
What are they doing?
There's this one major party in Italy that's rising up, and it's led by a superstar.
Oh,
Yeah.
kind of sounds like.
It's from the video of this from last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. What's his name?
5-star.
I forget his name. Italian and like.
Alessandro.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and when you have that public support or that view, right? Like people know who you are. You can obviously run with that.
Yeah.
But
We just need that.
well, but the thing too is those countries have parliamentary systems. So in a parliamentary system, like look at the UK right now. In the UK, Theresa May is the Tories. They're running the government, and then they called an election for Parliament because they were trying to strengthen their seat. Well, they lost their majority. And when there's not a majority in a parliamentary system, you have to create a coalition with another party to be a majority, right? So since they have parliamentary systems, it's easier for them to run more parties because what that means is that the parties work together in their parliament to create coalitions. I know, exactly. So, our system is just like, I don't know what the answer is, obviously. I don't think anyone does, but I think that, 200 and, someone do the math for me here, 1790 to today, 230, 40 years has proven that we are to the point now that we need a new federal system somehow. And if it's keeping the Electoral College and doing a runoff, that would be fine. I think we should get rid of the Electoral College and it should just be a pure vote. Because that is how we do Congress. Congressional elections are a pure popular vote.
Yeah, because it's you take Pennsylvania, they got so much. No, Ohio.
Right.
So
exactly.
Much electoral.
Exactly.
Votes.
And when you look at Rhode Island, like why candidates aren't going to spend time in Rhode Island? Doesn't matter. You get 3 electoral votes, but you go to California and you get 55.
Yeah.
And that's it does weight your votes, right? And like I do think we should all be voting, but in the presidential election, it really doesn't matter. If you're gonna vote like a Democrat in a red state, your vote really doesn't matter. It does on a local and state level and congressional level. Vote in all of those elections, but sitting at a presidential election really isn't gonna hurt you if you're in a state that is gonna go full red or full blue, and you're gonna vote the other way. You know, so.
One of the biggest flaws with having to do a pure vote and non-representative government in today's standards is the only way you're ever going to be able to count all of those votes and verify them is if you do it electronically.
Okay.
Full electronic. And you transmit all the information over the internet. And
Can that be hacked though?
that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's the biggest problem
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Is verification and mass duplication of votes.
Yeah, because we have 315 million people in the country.
Yeah.
Let's say half are voting.
Mhm.
How can you do that by
Some
hand?
are voting twice or more.
Right.
Like-
Dead people are voting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Lyndon Johnson got a nickname. His nickname in politics was Landslide Lyndon because he won a Senate seat before he was ever president, really suspiciously by like 8 votes, and it was suspected that they like stuffed the ballot box because that was back in the handwritten days. So I don't know what the answer is. I do hope you guys all vote on a local, state level though. Vote for your Congress people. They're the ones making the laws anyway. The president's a figurehead, right? They're signing or not signing, but the people making it are the guys that you don't really consider, right? A lot of people aren't voting for.
Well, I don't like that one senator.
Which one?
The one with the crappy grin. He always smiling.
Oh, Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, no, the other dude. They can't hear him.
Oh, Jeff Flake.
Yeah.
He's up for re-election next year.
He's just,
Yeah.
he's doing the wrong thing and he just sit up there and smile at you. Come on.
I know, right? I call his office almost every day. Join me. It's fun. It's really fun. Yeah, McCain's done. I don't think McCain will run again. His seat will be up in 2022. So I don't necessarily see him running again. Flake will run again in 2018. I don't know if they're just strong Democrat though. I'd love to see some independents though. Like I'm an independent. I vote both sides of the aisle.
Me too.
I've done both sides. I do lean liberal, obviously, but I'm not happy with the Democratic Party either. Like they're bought and paid for from different interests than the Republican Party is, right? So I just am unhappy because I feel like neither party represents average people, right? The Democrats have failed when you look at how they outreach in the South. They've pretty much ignored the South. Like, there's no Southern strategy for the Democratic Party. They focus on the coasts because they understand the electoral system. Republicans do the same thing. They know where their base is. They focus on that. But they're not writing bills for our best interests, right? They're writing bills for their interests.
That's why the southern states are Republican.
Yeah.
Because they won't.
And well, that's why the Democrats have ignored it. They're kind of like, well, we're not going to win them, so we'll ignore them. Well, maybe over time, if they see that you have an outreach strategy and that you're working with them instead of just, they're just ignorant rednecks. Because that's what people feel like down there. They think we're ignorant rednecks, so we're not going to vote for them. And that's the Democratic Party is exuding that view in that part of the world. It just is what it is. Another thing, too, is a big thing that I would like to see, too, is congressional term limits.
Yes.
Because when you've been in Congress for,
30 years.
you have no interest in if you only get 2 terms or 3 or whatever you decide on, then you have to go back into your district and live there.
Yeah.
So you have a vested interest in creating sustainable jobs and good infrastructure for your district because you have to go back and live there. I also don't think they should get full pensions for the rest of their life. Maybe something because you've served the government. Okay, yes, that's fine. But they get full health benefits the rest of their life. They get like full pensions, and that's all paid for us, and we all pay for that. So they get when you look at Mitch McConnell, Bernie Sanders, all these people have been in government for many, many years. Like Bernie Sanders has been in the House since the 90s, and then he's been in the Senate for the last 2 or 3 terms. Mitch McConnell's been in there for 36 years. Paul Ryan's been in for a while. So I think at some point we just need fresh blood, right? Like we need more people. We need to make it easier to run too, right? It's very hard. You have to have money or you have to know how to fundraise. And I have a lot of good ideas, but I don't really want to fundraise. So that takes me out, right? There's something that will discredit almost everybody unless you fall under that umbrella of I have a lot of money and I can fall in line. What do you think, Frank?
Well, like we said earlier, they're not going to vote themselves out.
No, of course not.
And they're not going to vote in term limits. I mean, unless something drastic.
Well, what I would love to see is the American electorate together, maybe mobilizing online somehow, but being like, hey, let's vote no incumbents for the next election. Everyone vote for someone new, even if it's Mickey Mouse. Just vote someone new. Let's just start over, right? So if they're an incumbent, vote them out. You know.
I do every election. I don't vote for any.
I write myself in a lot of when I'm unhappy. I urge my students to. I've gotten a few votes in the last election. I got like 4 votes. They're all like Trump, Clinton, Pfeiffer. 4 votes from the state of Arizona. But that's what it really was going to take is the electorate, because everyone complains, but everyone still votes for the same people.
Well, everyone complains, and then only 20% or 30%
Exactly. Yeah, especially in these local and these congressional elections, you have to vote in those elections. And so if you don't know who they are, all you have to do is go on people's websites, read their platforms. Right. What do you agree with? What do you think is feasible? I mean, it takes an hour of your time to research these candidates.
I mean, I know when I get the ballot, I go on the internet and I try to find something about them that I either agree with or disagree with. I mean, even all the judges.
I always look up the judges.
Sometimes I
the
find
Bar
something,
Association rates them. So you can go on to there's this one website where they'll list, like, you put in your zip code or your district, right, and it'll show you everyone running, and it'll show you the Bar Association.
Right.
And if they got a perfect score, I'll vote for them.
Right.
But there was a few people in my district last time for judges that they had like really bad scores on the Bar Association because they did something unethical or they broke the law. So I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm going to vote for them.
Right.
I like the idea of that, but I also don't like the idea of that.
That the Bar Association ranks them?
Yes.
Why not?
Because bias.
Well, there's bias.
And
yes.
Buying a good score.
Well, it could be. Yeah, I don't know how it goes into that.
I don't know how it works. I don't know how it does that, but the possibility is why I don't.
Well, we could take it a step further and say, okay, here's their score. Now let's look them up and see what their decisions have been. What have they decided, right?
That would be good.
So it's nice, it is a lot easier with internet today to be able to go in and make these decisions. But it's also like you can go on a website and they can make everything look really nice.
Right. Yeah,
So, another thing too is read the dissension of a candidate, right? Like read the other side. So don't just say, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to read the New York Times. Whatever they say, I'm going to go with, because then you're only going to vote Democrats. See what the conservative sites say about these people. What do they view that's wrong? Because both sides, you should be looking at both sides, right?
You can check out any congressman's voter record.
You can. There's a website that I get things every day. It's called GovTrack, G-O-V, track emails. And they'll send you an email. It's usually daily. Sometimes it's every few days. They talk about what Congress has been voting on. And there's stuff on there you never see in the news, right? It's really obscure, but they're voting on it, right? So it's worth knowing, what they're voting on. And yes, you can go on and you can see how they voted. I just call their office a lot. I'm like, how'd they vote? I'm going to go yay or nay. So that's always worth knowing, But, in a globally connected world, we have this information. We can use it to make things better. We need better education, though, right? We need, a lot of, when I look at students coming into college with, the way we teach history and civics is really wrong in this country, especially because we don't start till later. It should be an early thing, right? And it should be not just, what I noticed growing up when American history was taught, it was just all, it was almost too patriotic. Right? Like, yes, be proud of our history, but we also need to have a balanced view of our history. It's not very balanced. And then I remember one civics class in high school, and it was like worthless. They don't teach you how to go through media sources. They don't teach you, the political parties or anything like that. It's just kind of like, you're very basic. They think you're kind of dumb. They're talking down to you type of idea. But if we empower people with this knowledge when you're in junior high, high school, and then they hit college and they hit adulthood and they have this knowledge, that's when I think change can actually really, really get through. What do you think, Jason?
I think one of the biggest problems with how we teach history is we focus too much on memorization of dates, memorizations of very specific things, and not understanding why they happen.
So who's taken one of my history courses? None of my classes are like that. I never do multiple choice tests. I don't do tests because the thing about the facts, you can look them up. Okay, crap, when was the Spanish-American War? I'll look it up. But what's more important, understanding the impact of the Spanish-American War on American imperialism, or knowing who was the key general and when the years were. You can look that up. Like, all that stuff is easily accessible. You should know the impacts and how each era of American history has impacted the next era of American history. We teach it completely wrong. I see that too. My stepdaughter, she's studying American history at her high school this semester, but I saw how they were teaching our world history last year. I'm just like, she's like, has all these flashcards. I got to memorize all this stuff. I'm like, no. I mean, you do it because you need to get the grade and move on, but that's not how you should learn history. I'm like, allow me to enlighten. And then she's like, oh. And then I go on a tangent and she blocks me out. So I'm hopefully this opened your eyes a little bit into kind of this progression of how politics has changed in the United States, over time. We'll go into another system at some point. The pendulum will shift back and forth, right? We should all just kind of maybe focus less on, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and more, I'm a human being, I'm an American. And your opinion is worth listening to. You can discard it later, but everyone's, we can listen to each other, have these open dialogues, and as a country, we should be having some more dialogues. So I hope you guys have taken a lot of new information away from this entire course. Hopefully there's some things that maybe you've learned about maybe human trafficking, stuff going on in Central America, maybe just kind of open your eyes a little bit, and then it'll keep you more aware in the media as we move forward. Frank's all over the media, though. You're good. You've always been all over the media, right? Following the KTAR and everything.
Right, yeah.
So if you,
I really like the guy at night now. He I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he'll call them out. He calls out the Democrats and Republicans, and so I like the fact that he's not one-sided.
right.
And he seems to lean a little more to the right.
Yeah.
But he's still got no problem calling out the right and going, no, you're messed up too.
I like that because blind allegiance to one party or the other is a problem.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm a Democrat, so I'm only voting Democrat. I don't care if it's Satan himself, I'm voting for this Democrat, right? You should consider the way how you view and look at both sides. Jason, and then David.
That's one of the biggest problems with, or that's what they try and target.
Yeah.
They target the extremists or they try and develop extremists.
Right.
Because that means it's a guaranteed vote.
Exactly.
That means they have to do less work.
Well, in our generation, I'm an older millennial. I'm on like the millennial Gen X cusp. We're famously not part of political parties. We're, for the most part, younger, but then as they get older, they tend to then kind of, shift to a specific side or not. So, David, you had your hand up.
I've learned in the military that blind devotion will get you killed.
Yeah.
It'll get you killed.
You have to use some critical thinking.
Yeah, if your lieutenant say, we're going to bust this door, we're going to do it this way. I don't think so. You go first. You be taught there.
You first.
Right.
You first, if that's a great idea.
Because you be sacrificing my soldiers for your ego.
Right. Well, see, and then unfortunately, if you don't do it, then you're disobeying an order.
Right.
So.
All right, guys, so I didn't give you a break because I'm going to let you go now. So it's noon, they go 20 minutes early, all right? I was just on a tangent, and so just wanted to roll through. So again, just work on the nuggets, the participation assignment. Just put those in order. You have your reflection essay. Just make sure you follow all the directions in the description. Virgil?
Do you know how many nuggets there are?
Well,
One each week.
there'll be one in each week. Hold on. I can tell you right now. Yeah.
So should be about 14, right?
Yeah, 14 including the assignment.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 14. Okay. So yeah, and if you have questions on it, let me know. Right. I would like them in order. So what I would suggest is you guys put them on your phones, right? So it should be in order on your camera roll. So just start at the beginning. And instead of saying the dates, just say the week. Just say week 1 had these 2 nuggets. I mean, you can do the dates if that's easy for you. But if it was like, oh shit, I don't remember the date, but I know this was week 2 because we addressed this, that's okay, all right? So just maybe if you want to put them in week order or if you want to do them in specific date order, I'm okay with that as well, okay? And again, if you have questions on it or you need me to address something specific, let me know. I'm going to post an announcement today with just all these last minute kind of reminders for all you guys. More for the online students who aren't here every day. And then the final project. If you want me to review anything before you submit, please have it to me in email by tomorrow, by Tuesday. That way gives me time to review it, give you feedback that you can then apply to your final submission. Okay? If something comes up, you have an emergency and you're not going to get something finished by the deadline, please let me know immediately so we can create a schedule to get it in. Because with blended, I think I have to have grades in by like Monday or something. So I'll be grading pretty quick. But if something comes up and a death in the family or just something, an emergency, you can't get it in on time, that doesn't disqualify you from submitting. I just need to know, because if I start grading on Thursday and I don't see a submission, I'm going to put a 0. But if you said, hey, something came up, can I submit by Friday or Thursday? I'll work with you on that, is what I'm saying. Try to get it in by Wednesday, but if you do have an emergency, let me know. I'll work with you so we can get it in. Ivan?
Can that apply to the class assignment from Monday?
You're not graded on that.
Yep, for the nugget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be the nugget. So, but you can miss one nugget and still get the 100 points. So if that might be in the sake of time for you, you might be like, that's the nugget I'm going to miss. Okay? That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for taking my class. This has been a great semester. Hope you guys learned something. I always learn something in this class, so I'm glad you guys took it. Maybe I'll see you guys all in future classes. In the fall, I'm teaching this again, because it'll be every week, every semester, the Civil War and Reconstruction and American history. So feel free to join me in the fall, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your blended semester, and good luck with the rest of the summer. I'll probably see a lot of you on campus, so if you see anything interesting in the news you want to share, Frank, you have my number.
Oh,
Go ahead and text me. But I do have global issues full semester, so if you see anything in the news you think is worthwhile, I'll bring it up in my ground class as well. So you guys have a great one. I'll see you soon. I'll see all of you guys submitting your stuff by Wednesday. But let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll be available all day on Wednesday for you. Okay, you guys have a good one.
Wait, so we don't have to come to class on Wednesday?
No, oh yes, hold on. No class on Wednesday. You do not have to come to class. I want to make sure that's in the recording. Okay, now I'm stopping the recording. Yeah, no class on Wednesday. Use that time to finish up your